Welcome to episode number 60 of the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. Today we've got Ian Schnoor joining us as our third guest in our mini-series on the importance of building the skill of financial acumen in individuals and in teams. Ian is the president and founder of Marquee Group and is also executive director at the Financial Modeling Institute in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Thank you for sharing your talents and insights with us today, Ian.
You're very welcome, Andy. Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So in the spirit of full transparency here, Ian and I work together as part of the Financial Modeling Institute. I'm on the board, and Ian runs the thing. And I just couldn't be more proud of the work that Ian and his team are doing to increase financial acumen, financial awareness really around the world. So thank you for that, Ian.
Thank you. It goes right back at you. It's been a thrill to have you and your incredible insights and guidance on the team.
Yeah, thanks. Now, before we get started on the topic at hand, I always like to ask my guests to tell our listeners your story.
Sure. I have about an hour for this question.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I will keep that short. As you mentioned, I'm in Toronto now. I'm from Central Canada. I did an undergraduate degree and then started a career as an investment banker. And I worked in investment banking for a few years, all the while loving the modeling work and the technical work of building models and what that entailed and what that meant. And after a number of years doing financial investment banking, I left and I started a company that you mentioned called the Marquee Group, which is a training business. And at Marquee, we provide training programs all over the world, mostly in North America, but we've run courses all over the world in financial modeling, evaluation, all sorts of analysis, accounting, Excel, data management, data science, to help people bolster and build the skills they need to be tremendously competent and capable in their work. And then around 5 years ago, I was involved with others in starting and founding the Financial Modeling Institute. We recognized that there was a huge gap in the global market. There was no way for people to prove that they had strong financial modeling skills. And as we'll talk about, modeling has elevated and become a absolutely critical skill set. But there has historically never been any way for people to validate and prove those skills. And so think of the Financial Modeling Institute like an accounting CPA or a CFA. We're trying to be the accreditation organization, which is what we do, through rigorous testing to allow people to both learn and then test and validate their skills. So I have been in this technical and modeling space for a long, long time, 20, 25 years, and that kind of gets us up to date.
Yeah, I just before I go on to my second question, can you explain to our listeners what a financial model is? If you had to describe it in like 30 seconds or less for the uninitiated, how would you describe a financial model?
I might be slightly over 30, but I will do my best. I mean, in a nutshell, a financial model has sort of a bigger umbrella definition and then a tighter definition that we use at the FMI. I mean, in theory, a financial model really just means building a spreadsheet to create a virtual representation of something in a spreadsheet that exists in the real world. So trying to analyze and understand anything in software, usually it's a spreadsheet, can be considered a model, some sort of a software virtual tool. However, in the world of corporate finance and the world that we live in, most people tend to have a narrower view of a financial model, which simply we use the term to refer to a spreadsheet-based tool that is a forecast. What we're trying to do is build a forecast, usually for a full company. It might be for a division or a business line, but we're trying to build for often 5-year, sometimes 10 or longer, but think of it as a 5-year forecast of a company's financial statements into the future. That's what the model is, but the purpose is to allow us to make the most critical, important business decisions that you'd ever need to make about that organization.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with our listeners. Now, the second question is, I like to ask, is there one event that you can put your finger on in your life that was a key accelerant for your career that got you to where you are today?
Yeah, a key accelerant. I love the question as to where I got to. Sometimes you need to pay attention to how you're doing and how you're feeling and within a certain situation. So as I mentioned, I had spent 6 years. Well, I'd spent 6 years as an investment banker. The last couple at Citigroup. It was called Solomon Smith Barney at the time. It's now part of Citi, and it was fine. I mean, I wasn't loving the work that I was doing. It was a great organization and a great place to work. And this was just after 9/11. There were all sorts of layoffs happening, and my group got cut and I got let go. And that was a tremendous accelerant because I don't know, looking back, I don't know if I would have had, the inner strength to just walk away from an excellent job that was paying very, very well. I don't know if I would have had the people always ask me, what made you leave banking? And I said, well, I didn't make that decision. That was just made for me. I had help with that decision. The decision I made was not to go back. I had plenty of opportunities to go back to banking. I knew people in a bunch of banks and there were opportunities, but I made the decision to say, no, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a pause because I feel like there's things I want to do. So I thought, let me try for 3, 6, or 9 months to see if I can, in university, I always enjoyed teaching. I was tutoring people. I was always helping people. It was just sort of a natural part of how I used to study for courses, is to try and help people and tutor people. So there felt like a natural synergy to use my teaching background and my love of teaching and of models and modeling to see if I could build some training content and learning around that. And the rest, as they say, is history. At Marquee, we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary. So I haven't looked back, but that was a single event that allowed me to accelerate into the next step.
Yeah, excellent, excellent lesson for our learners. One door closes, another one opens, and in this case, you open the door yourself. In many cases, that's what you have to do. You have to push that other door open, which is exactly what you did. So let's dive into the topic for today.
Great.
When you hear the phrase financial acumen, what does that phrase mean to you?
Gosh, I love the word. I love the word acumen because it's bold, it has meaning, but it's not quite as tactile or tangible. Let me tangentially move for a second. When we talk about financial modeling, the reason why I like it, because for me, it relates a lot to financial modeling. Whenever I teach courses or I talk about financial modeling, people often hear me talk about the fact that part of the reason I love financial modeling, and many people do, is because it's very multidisciplinary. It means lots of different things. To be good at building a strong forecast model of a company, you need lots of different skills. You have to understand accounting really well and finance, and you have to have some really good spreadsheet skills, usually Excel skills, and you need to understand data design and data flow and how to and communication is pivotal as well. So a lot of skills need to be pulled together, wrapped up into a financial model and modeling skills. And I think of the word acumen similarly. To me, acumen is a combination. It's an accumulation of technical capability, of communication. It means financial communication, presentation, technical skills, confidence, having acumen. When you say someone has technical skills, they might just have that straight technical skills. But saying you've got acumen means you've got good judgment, insight, confidence, clarity. And to me, acumen wraps up all of that, which dovetails so nicely with what we're trying to do in financial modeling.
That's excellent. Now let's take the conversation back and way back to the beginning, which is in our school systems. You've spent years training and coaching financial professionals who are kind of on the output side of our educational system. They've learned advanced financial concepts. But in your assessment, what needs to change in our primary and secondary education in Canada and in other regions of the world to improve financial literacy, which is the precondition for strong financial acumen?
I think that financial literacy, financial acumen is is critical to anyone, certainly anyone that works in business, but anyone beyond that. You might run your own flower shop. You might have any role, and being able to understand some level of financial literacy does not need to be, again, really difficult, but I think it has to start earlier. It has to come with the recognition that insights and literacy and understanding financial concepts is a critical part of our learning evolution. And I would love to see it get, a couple of my daughters in high school had options to do classes on financial management, but they either did or they didn't do them. But I don't believe that talking about literacy in financial concepts is as integrated in curriculums as much as it could or should be from an early stage. And I think when people are comfortable earlier on, it of course allows them to just stay comfortable throughout their life. So, I don't have a great sense for how to change that, but I do think that would go a long way.
Super. Now, let's move on to the collegiate level.
Sure.
We're kind of marching through the educational life cycle. Let's play a little thought experiment here.
Yeah.
If you had a university chancellor sitting right in front of you right now, what advice would you give to them to set their graduates up for success in the workplace as it relates to financial acumen?
Sure. Well, at the collegiate level, at the university level, I'm certainly more intimate, more comfortable because we have been teaching and I have worked with tens of thousands of university students and recent graduates over the years. Guess what I would say, and I would hope that they would just agree, is that, as the world changes and the world evolves, the role of universities has evolved. And I certainly don't disparage or diminish the need for universities to provide ideas and to allow students to think. That's absolutely critical. But recognize that for many, many students that go to university, it is a means for which they can achieve career stability and career success as well. And so incorporating more tangible, tactile, practical elements. Some schools I know do a better job of this than others. Incorporated is not, sometimes I have a sense when I speak with academics that it is belittling to include technical or practical elements within a university academic environment, when in fact it's what the students need and want and what's being demanded by recruiters as well. So I sometimes feel like there's a disconnect, and I think universities can do a better job continuing what they do, but also finding a way, and they'll use firms like us to assist with that. But I think it needs to be more part of the mindset and the culture. Some programs, of course, have been doing this forever. You can't become a doctor just by sitting in class. Obviously, the last few years, you are in a hospital or a doctor's office for most of your time. And yet in other areas, you leave and you graduate without a great sense for the practical basis. And I think there's kind of a symbiosis that can happen between the theoretical and the hands-on practical.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got Ian Schnoor on the show today talking about financial acumen. We're going to take a short commercial break. Thanks for listening to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andrew Temte. In my book, Balancing Act, Teach, Coach, Mentor, Inspire, I explore the characteristics required of leaders who must find balance between strength and vulnerability, confidence and selflessness, passion and measure, and leadership and followership. Balancing Act is available today at Amazon.com. And we're back. I love it when folks on podcasts say, and we're back. And sometimes there isn't even a commercial in between. I just love it. I've been waiting to say, and we're back for a long time. So our previous mini-series touched on the importance of communication and storytelling in business. How does improved financial acumen help non-financial leaders and managers improve their communication and storytelling skills? Can you link the two together?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's funny. I've talked about modeling a little bit already, and we've talked about the fact that what it is a forecast. And the reason we forecast is because in the world of business and finance, the vast majority of decisions that are made are based on forecasts. You don't make decisions on personnel. You don't make decisions on raising more money or evaluations based on what happened last year or in the past. It's about what you think is going to happen. And that's why it's so critical to have a forecast. But so there's a very technical element of understanding and building up a model. But what I often tell people, and I let them sometimes guess in a class, what they think I will say is the number one most important skill that a good financial modeler needs to have. Because in my view, what it is strong communication skills. What a good model does is it allows you to tell a story. If you can't tell a story or communicate your ideas to your audience, whether that's your boss or your client, you're done. It's useless, right? You were a senior executive for a long time. I'm sure you saw more than just 2 or 3 presentations come to you that you didn't understand and think, what the heck are they talking about? Of course, you're not going to be able to move forward with a project if you can't understand it. Having clarity and being able to communicate that is pivotal. Now, for a non-financial person, the reality is that the numbers will always form a strong part of a story, right? Anytime there's a story, it has to be partly based on a financial impact. And I think that it is incumbent upon all professionals, not just the numbers person, to be comfortable with the numbers. And so what I always say is if you are really comfortable with the idea of the numbers and what it means to kind of dive in and you're not afraid of it, it allows you to focus more on telling the story. It's like driving a car. And I use that analogy in classes all the time. When you are first driving a car, when you first learn, and my daughter just got her license and just learned, you're so focused on the surroundings inside the car. You're focused on the touch and feel of the steering wheel and on the pedals are so strange and on where's the radio and how do I control the heat? And you're absolutely in your own little bubble and hoping to heck that your parent beside you is not, you're not going to get them into a car crash. But as you become more comfortable and intimate with your surroundings inside the car and it becomes second nature, you're not focused on the car. You're focused on the road. You're staring at the road. You're focused on where you're going. You're focused on everything around you. And it's the same thing I tell people with financial acumen. Having a good sense of what the numbers mean allows you to step beyond it and to say, where are we going? And how do the numbers get us there? Otherwise, you're constantly hesitant and afraid to think and to speak in an intelligent way about the messaging. But the messaging will always need to partly include, not exclusively, but there's always a discussion around strategy and marketing. And I get that. But the numbers do need to form for most people, a pretty critical piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is don't outsource the financials wholly to the finance department. If you're a non-financial leader, let's say you're running marketing or you're running operations, et cetera, you can't solely rely on the financial professionals within your business to do all things related to the numbers. Yes, you need their help, but you've got to have a solid understanding because it's on you to tell the story. And if you don't understand the numbers, then how are you going to tell the story?
100%. You have to understand it. You can't, because it's so, this, you've seen this. It becomes obvious to the recipient of the story if someone is speaking about something and they're not completely comfortable. You can tell when someone is just going through the motions and talking about something, but they're not comfortable answering questions, they're not really comfortable. That doesn't mean that the marketing person must be the expert in all things accounting. You're always allowed to say at a certain point, listen, you know what, that's getting a little bit deep. I'm going to turn this to, our accountant to answer that particular question. But understanding the implications, how did you arrive where you did? How did you build up to it? That's the thing. It's not just about understanding the numbers. It's about conveying confidence. And a recipient, your boss, your client, wants to feel a strong sense of confidence. And the way they feel confidence is when they feel that everyone on the team brings a tremendous acumen and that they are bringing confidence, which just says, I got this. I know what we're doing. I'm totally comfortable, and that's why I'm comfortable sharing these ideas. And when you do that, I think it's really critical for all people, all professionals, to be able to deliver that level of confidence.
Yeah. So, thus far we've talked about kind of a dearth of financial education within our primary and secondary schools. So, we're sending outputs from there into our collegiate environments that are not financially astute. And then those outputs then go into the business community. What advice do you have for business leaders to build financial acumen in their teams?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, advice for business leaders to build acumen is, first of all, exposure, immersion, right? First of all, we have to kind of peel back, tear down the walls and the silos, right? There needs to be an intention towards creating comfort, and not, as we said already, not relying on the finance team to deliver the numbers and you can just talk about them. There has to be a recognition that all people, and it's okay, and it may make people feel vulnerable. Just because you're not an expert in one area, that's fine. The accountant is not going to be the expert in marketing strategy or digital marketing strategy. That's fine. You don't need to be the expert in all areas to be comfortable getting involved and talking to it very confidently. So there has to be a notion around access, exposure, training, of course, putting people through programs that push them and that get them out of their comfort zone. But I'm the first to admit, training by itself is useless unless it's just a spark. You need to be able to perpetuate it and keep it going and ensure that people are then utilizing those concepts to say, listen, we're going to put you through some initial training concepts. And then we expect that every time you deliver a memo or a document or a presentation, you're going to include these concepts in this framework, and you are going to do the work to make sure you're comfortable with it. So I think it comes from largely a mindset shift of what people need to do and how to recognize that there needs to be I think really strong leaders do have a multidisciplinary sense for what's going on around them. The days of being highly siloed, I think, are well behind us. And I hear this from engineers, from lawyers, from accountants all the time. They need more breadth than they ever did in there before. So yeah, it has to start at the top. And that's kind of how I would do it, with exposure, training, testing, all sorts of things to kind of move people forward.
Yeah. So what I was writing down a quote from you that training is just the spark, that
Right.
it has to be followed up with experiential application. So I've got that written down on my
right. And you
cute
can quote me
little-
on it. And that's from a guy who's started and built a training business. I can't make people learn, right? I can't make people learn. I can't make people internalize concepts. I can show them the way and give them a framework and get them excited. But then it is a partnership between the teacher and the learner.
Yeah. And then one other thing that I was thinking about during your response to that question was that we've got to stop shaming people for not understanding financial concepts. I've seen it play out over and over again where you're in the boardroom and you're having a conversation about the numbers or a strategic plan, and somebody in the room doesn't get it. And so the person, another person who knows what those numbers mean and has that insight, instead of reaching out and lending a hand and saying, hey, how can I help you gain a better understanding of what's going on, they instead take the smackdown approach and provide negative feedback, which is just going to make that individual clam up even more and resist learning even more.
Well, culture, I mean, you're talking to culture, which is critical. And if that comes from the very top, if that smackdown comes from the very, very top, then I think there's a problem that may not be solvable within that organization. I mean, and if it's a problem from a mid-level executive or a fairly senior executive, then I think it's incumbent upon the most senior execs to speak with that person or have another smackdown and say, you can't do that. That is not a tolerable, we don't tolerate that. There are plenty of things you don't know either. And, I mean, a strong culture is going to entail support and getting people what they need, recognizing that everyone brings a high level of expertise in certain areas and a comfort level in lots of other areas. And you're absolutely right. I mean, any sort of disparaging smackdown will only force people into their shell, not comfortable getting out of it. So I have not seen that often, and it sounds like, and I know you have, that's disappointing to hear, but I would hope that our good leaders out there can help to ensure that that's not the case.
Yeah. So, Ian, we're getting close to the end of our time here. My final question, we're going to play another thought experiment. Let's assume that you've got a non-financial professional sitting right in front of you who's convinced themselves that they, quote unquote, hate math and all things accounting and finance. How would you coach them to bring their anxiety level down and help make these concepts less intimidating and less scary?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's really great because a lot of people shut down and close doors when there are things that are scary. I guess I would start by letting them know that whether they like it or not, finance and accounting is just a language. It is the language that allows us to make the most important decisions in business, in organizations. So they'll probably would agree with that. And then I would, listen, if it was me, I would start with you need to have buy-in. I mean, as I said, I can teach, but I can't make you learn. You need to learn. And so so that's why I would start to pry the door open by talking about why they will feel better about themselves, about their roles, about their prospects, if they can be comfortable with this language, and let them know that it's not brain surgery, it's not rocket science, and then start to talk piece by piece map out a pacing. First of all, you have to be having fun. It's very difficult to learn when you are tense and tight. So that's why in classes we like to joke around and tell jokes, because when people are at ease, they're learning, whether they know it or like it or not. They're having fun. They want to pay attention. You're more receptive to concepts and ideas when it feels easy and natural. So we like to do things in a pace that's manageable, at a level that's manageable. Push people, but not too hard. Got to go in a cadence that works. And kind of develop a journey that we will map out that allows someone to get there. And then when they look back at the end, they'll think, wow, that was so much fun. And I learned a lot. But it does need to start with buy-in. So identify what are the specific areas you need and want to kind of tackle. You don't have to tackle the whole world overnight. And how can we get there? But if they recognize that it's going to be critical for their own success, I think they will buy into the idea. So I would do that if I was with someone that needed to elevate and move forward.
Yeah, help folks understand how finance and financial concepts relate to them and their daily lives. Make it important that they understand.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt. Well, the one thing I tend to find is extraordinarily helpful is, as I said, demystifying and explaining why. So for instance, if you're talking about, let's say, a certain ratio, and someone has learned that a certain ratio tells you something, they might feel uncomfortable because they don't know what goes into the ratio or why it's used. So if you can say, listen, all this ratio is you've got a numerator and denominator. Let's say it's a debt over EBITDA ratio. Well, what it tells you is X. And what it means is if it's above this level, there's a risk. And if it's below this level, it means the following. And so when people understand why, when they understand why something is the way it is, first of all, it enhances and absorbs the learning. The learning becomes solidified because you're not just memorizing it, it's meaningful. And then they feel comfortable and confident discussing it and talking about it. So there's a lot of tools that I use and we use to try and facilitate learning, but understanding why, people then realize, oh, that's not a big deal at all. I was scared of that and I didn't need to be. And so anyway, that's a tool that I think can be very helpful.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything that you'd like to add to our conversation to promote Marquee or FMI as we wrap up?
Oh, thank you. I mean, first of all, it's a thrill to be here. We could go on for a long time. Was really thrilled to be part of your podcast and continue working with you. I would say that if people are interested in bolstering or enhancing their financial acumen, particularly as it relates to the skill involved in building forecast tools, which again are used to make the most critical, pivotal business decisions, then they can check out a huge range of training courses that we offer at the Marquee Group in Excel, data science, modeling, valuation, etc. But then if they want to truly validate those skills, you can come to the Financial Modeling Institute, the FMI, where we have different programs that allow people to truly learn and then validate their financial modeling skills in particular. So you're welcome to reach out if you have questions. But I hope people can find us if that will be helpful.
Excellent. Well, you can find Ian Schnoor on LinkedIn and at Marquee Group and the FMI. He and his team do wonderful, wonderful work. So this is the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andrew Tempte. Please like, subscribe, rate, share, especially these episodes on financial acumen, because it is so incredibly important for the future of human beings and businesses and institutions. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy.